Good evening. Before we go to our big debate tonight, here is an important piece of information that I wanted to bring to the notice of all you viewers. The government has revised the GDP data, the India's growth data has been revised upwards for the last couple of years. Now let's just try and put this in perspective and bring those data figures to you. If you really look at it, growth has been rock solid under the Modi government despite demonetization and GST. If you look at an average, since the Modi government came to power, the GDP growth rate has been above 7%. On a global level, 7% is a very good number, even for a country like India, where experts say the growth must be much higher. On an average, since 2014, we've been way above 7%. Now, here comes the interesting part. The government has revised some of this data. It's still an estimate, it's a revised estimate. For 2017-2018, the GDP grew now at 7.2% versus the earlier revised estimate of 6.7%. That's a 0.5, a half a percent difference, an increase in what we are estimating our growth was last year. But the year before that, the year that we will all remember for a long time, the year that demonetization was announced, in 2016-2017, India's economy grew at 8.2%. That's the recent estimate the government is giving us today, versus the earlier estimate of 7.1%. It's over a percent increase with this revision that's happening just one day before the interim budget. So if all you look at it, in the demo year, we had the highest growth that the Modi government has clocked during its tenure. In the year where we saw massive changes on ground. Now let me rebuild this for you again. How did we reach to the highest growth year? In 2014, after this current government came to power, they changed the methodology of gross domestic product calculation. They changed the base year that was taken as a benchmark to calculate your growth, and they also changed what gets included and not. A year later, in 2016 November, demonetization strikes. So while the growth rate for pre-demonetization year was 8%, India actually did better when 85% of the currency had been sucked out of the system, when businesses had to shut down for 3 to 6 months, when there was no cash, no liquidity, when the loan growth was at a low level of 5%. Think about it, viewers. I'm sure our experts, our economists will analyze this data deeper and tell us what really happened here. But I thought this was an interesting data point to bring to your notice that in the 4 years of Modi government's tenure, the best growth rate that we saw was in the year demonetization was announced. Now, let's move to our big debate. We focus on the ICICI Bank scandal one more time. And not because we simply want to talk about what Chanda Kocchar did or didn't do, to what extent is she guilty. No. That's for the CBI to decide. That's for the courts to decide based on the CBI investigation now. But we want to talk about larger accountability of the banking system, because far too many frauds have happened, far too many defaults have happened, and it is time that those who are sitting at the helms of these banks are made accountable. I don't think we should accept it anymore if one or small or two low-level employees are let go of. Chanda Kocchar will be the first big name to face this investigation, especially coming from the private sector. How did this start? Well, the Justice Sri Krishna Committee report confirmed and indicted Chanda Kocchar, saying that she violated the bank's code of conduct. This report's finding, this panel's finding says that Chanda Kocchar acted in conflict of interest and she failed to disclose that there was conflict of interest. Videocon got a loan of 1,575 crore, a total loan of 3,700 crores was approved. All of this done as a wrongful gain, and which is what the CBI will now be probing. Based on that, the ICICI Bank has put complete onus on Chanda Kocchar. She did not make any disclosures. She did not tell us if there was conflict of interest. We didn't know. Should we buy that? Should that be unacceptable? This is what Chanda Kocchar says. Apart from, of course, being hurt and disappointed that her own bank that she was leading has now kicked her out unceremoniously, Chanda Kocchar says none of the credit decisions at a bank are unilateral. Meaning, it's not as if I am the boss, I tell them to do this and it's done. Over 10 meetings were held to discuss the Videocon loan by various committees within the ICICI Bank. Are we to believe that at no point did anybody ask a question, does this company deserve this loan? Are we to believe that nobody bothered to find out that the company's owner was doing business with Chanda Kocchar? If so, then what good are these systems that are in place? And let me add one more thing to you before we go across to our panelists. Times Network has actually found out from our sources that RBI had raised the red flag after an audit in 2016. And no action was taken at that point of time. So there has to be some more questions asked. The blame cannot solely and only be on Chanda Kocchar. That's what we are saying tonight. Should the bank not be made accountable? Should questions not be asked of the RBI? How is it that this went unnoticed for so long? Let's say good evening to our panelists without any further delay. Ramakant Gaur, lawyer with the Supreme Court. Ravindra Gupta, Joint Secretary, All India Bank Officers Confederation. Hemendra Hazari, banking expert, joining us this evening. Mr. J.N. Gupta, Managing Director for Stakeholders Empowerment Services and former Executive Director of SEBI. Bhaskar Ghosh of the BJP. Mr. Gupta, good evening. I'm going to come to you first. When I was reading the statement that was issued by ICICI last evening, it gave me the feeling that the message is that only Chanda Kocchar is to blame, that she didn't make any disclosures. In other words, to say that all those big names who sat on those credit committees to decide on the loan and the alleged quid pro quo have done nothing wrong. Do you buy this argument?
Well, Tanvi, in fact, in the last program, we also discussed that every bank...
Yes, sorry. Mr. Ravindra Gupta, go ahead, please.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
Okay. In the financial sector, every bank has their set rules, and in fact, these rules are governed by the Reserve Bank of India, Government of India, and under that they function. And boards has also empowered with certain powers, and definitely there are vigilance rules and also the system and procedure and set corporate governance, and the functional rules are applicable to all the banks. And in fact, the value of the loans and their sanctioning power vested with the different level of the officers. And high value loans are always considered by the board of directors. And the board of directors of every bank is very high, empowered, experienced people. They bring them from the different walk of life. The RBI nominee is there, Government of India nominee is there, shareholders nominee is there, and also the managing directors of the bank and the EDRs of the banks are on the board. So this is the set rule of the functioning of the bank. And in addition to that, the Chanda Kocchar case, basically the finding is totally depend on 2 points. One is quid pro quo and the conflict of interest. In fact, everywhere in the banking industry, there is a set rule. This is a set service rule that applies to each and every employee, that one person cannot give loan to himself as well as to the family members, as well as to the friends and other the people, those are known to them. And immediately they have to recuse themselves from that decision making, and they have to be very transparent and disclose the identities, etc. And according to that, and in fact, in this case, the Videocon got a loan of 40,000 crores from the consortium of the banks, and out of that 3,300 crores was given by the ICCI. And presently, if you find that the appraisal of that loan has not yet been questioned,
yes.
Only when the Videocon loan gone bad, after that, the question arises in the month of March. And the second point is that there is a lot of difference between the functioning of the private bank and the public sector bank. Public sector banks are coming under the framework of the Central Vigilance Commission, and the same way private banks are not covered under that. So there is a lot of difference in the operational guidelines in the private bank and the private sector bank. Had it been in the month of March when this thing has came into light, had it been as a public sector bank, then definitely this man would have been sacked immediately. But in this present case, it took more than 9 months to take the action. And the same way, here again, the CVC was not involved. Only the panel of the Shri Krishna panel, the Supreme Court lawyer, was placed on that.
Yes.
So there's a lot of difference is there in the functioning of public sector bank. And one more point. One more point I just want to make.
Yes.
Last time I couldn't make it, that in the boards, you will see that in the public sector boards, all boards are not yet complete. There is the director nominee from the workman and the officer. As on the last 3 years, all 20 banks have no nominee from that side. Since the boards are not complete, and probably we have to go into the functioning of the boards also, that how they have been sanctioning the loans when the boards are not complete, boards are, fractured in manners. So how the banks are functioning in that way? So definitely there are many big questions on the functioning of the boards also in that way. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a relevant point that you've raised. Mr. Jain Gupta, let me come to you next. Who all should be questioned and held accountable? Surely the buck cannot stop just at Chanda Kocchar.
Okay. I will take it from this. The first issue is this, that when somebody sits on a board, he is not a detective or he is not a sleuth. A director will go by what is given to him. So in this case, if there were 10 directors on the board and Chanda Kocchar had not disclosed her conflict of interest or her disclosure was not proper, other directors would not know anything about it unless until it was already in public domain. So I would not fault any of those directors which took the loan decision. They would have been faulted if the loan decision per se was bad. So as of now, the news is not that the loan decision was bad, but the news is that Chanda Kocchar failed to disclose. So the board at that time which took the decision is not at fault. Then comes the question, when this whistleblower complaint came, what was done? Now when this whistleblower complaint came, a very quick clean sheet was given to Madam Kocchar. Now whether there was a proper inquiry or not, we do not know. But then with this clean sheet having given to the Mr. Kocchar, then pressure built up and a new independent inquiry was conducted, and with Justice Shri Krishna has found that Chanda Kocchar is guilty of non-disclosure and conflict of interest. Now we do not know the truth, but we go by whatever is given into the newspaper report something. So assuming Chanda Kocchar was wrong, if Chanda Kocchar was wrong, then Justice Shri Krishna did not have any other fact which could have come from some other planet. He would have got only those information which was already there with the bank. So the question arises of how the then board of the ICICI gave clean sheet to Madam Kocchar within a day or two or whatever time it may be. Then the news item is that there was a report given by Cyril Amarchand Mangaldas for basis that there is no conflict interest, no lack of disclosure. But then later that law firm withdrew that report because they felt that proper information was not given. Now the question that arises, whether proper information was given to Amarchand or not, what information was hidden, and what additional information was given to Justice Sri Krishna by which he found Madam Kocchar wrong. If that is discovered, then you will have to find fault with the board which gave clean chit. What was the hurry? Now suddenly, board has moved from North Pole to South Pole. Chanda Kocchar was not guilty, and 9 months down the line, Chanda Kocchar is so much guilty that you are not giving her a chance, and you are going back 10 years and taking back all the bonus and all the things.
Yes.
Now, from the Chanda Kochar's perspective, she has every right to be heard.
Sure.
For the simple reason, the justice system in India says that you got to follow the law of natural justice. She has not been given an opportunity.
Yes.
So I do not know who is right, who is wrong, but apparently the fact is that somewhere or other Chanda Kocchar failed to disclose her interests, and whatever is her defense, we do not know.
Yes. That's one aspect. That's what the probe panel seems to have found. Of course, the CBI will investigate this further. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, I see your hand, but just give me 2 minutes. I wanted to first go across to a couple of our other panelists. Hemendra Hazari, to you first. Do you think, like Mr. Jayan Gupta is saying, without giving her a chance to explain now, this time bank has moved very quickly to distance themselves from her, to ask for 9.2 crore worth of bonus back from her, to initiate that claw back, because there is a bit of nervousness with the way CBI has moved, filed that FIR and named people beyond Kocchar, big names in that FIR. Is that why there is this kind of a response?
You see, firstly, let me add that if she was a PSU banker, she would not only have been dismissed, but she would have, the CBI would have even put her in judicial custody. And we have seen this in the case of other, PSU bankers like Bank of Maharashtra, where the CEO and ED were actually put in judicial custody, and then they were released because the evidence was not there for criminal prosecution. So in my view, although the media is saying that, what a heavy penalty she had to pay, that the enormous bonus and stock options will have to be taken back. In my opinion, she's got off very lightly with the kind of charges that were levied. And let me tell you, in the private sector, when such charges are levied against the CEO, it is natural for the board to really protect the CEO and not the organization. This is the way the private sector actually operates under such circumstances. Because unlike a PSU bank, which has representatives not only of government, but of RBI, and even CVC are there as a general manager, they are the countervailing forces against a CEO. But in the private sector banks, you will notice that the CEO has a very long tenure. So therefore, there is no CVC, there is no RBI normally. In ICICI Bank, there was a government nominee who apparently looked away. So there, even the executive directors normally will not have the courage to take on the CEO, because they know that if they take the CEO on, they will be dismissed from the bank or totally sidelined. And since the CEO has long tenure, there's really no future for such, managerial officers. So normally what Chanda Kocchar said, everything was not unilateral. It does not need to be, because the power of the CEO is so immense in a private sector bank that everyone, all the executives fall in line. And this is the point that has to be appreciated. It is not that, there are various independent people who take independent decisions. It does not work that way in reality. So in my view, she had to be really swiftly removed at the earliest, and the board totally defended her, and that is why today the credibility of the ICICI Bank board is at its nadir.
No, that's a very pertinent point that you've raised. In fact, even 2 days ago when we had this conversation, the length of the tenure was a point of conversation, and many suggested it has to be shortened. But there are credit committees in place, and we are being told, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, that these committees, together with many people, big faces, experienced names, are all supposed to come together and take a decision on a loan. Multiple meetings are held. But it looks like again and again and again in private banks and public banks, this system of checks and balances seems to be failing.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Ghosh, the question was to you.
All right. So here I was just hearing all my fellow panelists. They are trying to describe the volume of the irregularities and what would be done and not. But being representing a political party, I can now I just when I was probing, I was found a stark similarity of two cases which we recently happened. See here, one, if I see the facts, about 3,250 crores of loan was under irregularity till now as per the CBI charge sheets. The name was involved Chanda Kocchar, Deepak Kocchar, Benugopal Dhoots, and then ex-MD Kamath, Sandeep Bakshi, and Kanan, and then Zarin Daruwala, and then Rajiv Sabharwal, and Sanjay Chatterjee, all of them. But where I found a unique case that this loan was sanctioned on 2009, September 7th. 64 crores to Kochar's farm and New Power through this company SEPL. And then the New Power incorporated in 2008 were three partners, Deepak Kocchar, Venugopal Dhoot and the Saurav Dhoot. Then they resigned within a month, and then a 19,97,500 shares was allocated warrant to Deepak Kocchar at a rate of 10% of the warrant ₹1. And this quid pro quo, whatever we are he has been alleged, but this case is I found very similar to case of Karti Chidambaram, where the same way number of companies was created in order to hello, are you listening?
Yes, we are. Go ahead, please. But where are you going with this? I'm not understanding. What is the point that you're trying to make?
Yeah. So number of fictitious form have been created. Just give me 1 second. Created in order to siphon the money. Now we are talking about RBI. We are talking about all these regulatory authorities. But if you see all these big loans of 40,000, 50,000 crores, what our Honorable Prime Minister says is a loan by phone banking. This is a unique example of the loan by phone banking. Even the finance minister of the Congress regime has been accused with his family under the same conspiracy and siphoning of the public funds.
Okay.
What today Chanda Kocchar has done, Deepak Kocchar has done, the same thing was accused. And our government, recently you see the today's news, we are after all these, all these scandalous persons.
Yes.
We will not spare them. But this practice of phone banking, giving loan have been practiced throughout the UPA1 and UPA2.
Okay, I don't think Venugopal Dhoot was actually dialing up ICICI Bank on the phone and asking for thousands of crores of loan, Bhaskar Ghosh. So let's not talk about that. It's not about the common man. It's not about the facilities to the common man. It's about the facilities and the long rope which is given to the big corporates. 1 minute, please. Do not derail this conversation. Might I also remind you...
political masters. Who is there?
May I also remind you that since you're sitting here and chest thumping about the action against the scam accused, Bhaskar Ghosh, you've made your point. Everybody heard you out. Kindly please not talk when I am talking. Please listen. Let's not talk over each other. I'm simply reminding you that while, yes, a good step was taken yesterday by bringing two scam accused back to India, your own top minister, top BJP leader is sitting and writing blogs slamming CBI for taking action in this case. So I don't know what you're talking about now. Now let me move on. Ramakant Gaur has heard everybody out, so I'm going to quickly go to him for his comments. Go ahead, please, Mr. Gaur.
So many sweet words and rhetorics cannot put a curtain in front of the crime. It's a financial crime, well-planned financial crime, and the investigating agency could not do something which was to be done expeditiously in more than 1 year's time. Let's look at the dates. Preliminary inquiry in this case was registered on 8/12/2017. What took CBI to register the FIR in January 2019? Who was stopping? Any other government or any other investigating agency, or who was stopping the CBI? CBI came to the conclusion in 8 paragraphs, and it has accused all rank and files of ICICI Bank. When a loan file is moved, Tanvi, it is examined at the very basic managerial level. And when at the manager level or at the auditor level, it is seen that who is the director, who are the shareholders, where this money is being utilized, one can easily decipher. There is no rocket science in that. Anyone can make out that Deepak Kocchar is the director, or Deepak Kocchar is acquiring shares of this company. There was no rocket science in finding out that Deepak Kocchar is acquiring this company which has acquiesced thousands of crores of public money as loan, and the loan is going bad. It's a crime. And the crime was being allowed by the auditors, by the ICICI officials, and all other persons who were conniving.
Right.
It's not only Chanda Kocchar. They can corner Chanda Kocchar today, but what were they doing when they were being examined by RBI?
Yes.
What did RBI do? By the way, RBI is the custodian of all banks, whether it is government bank or the private bank. They are all governed by the RBI. The Finance Act is the parent act, and RBI was not toothless. It did not take action well in time. It is for them to respond. It is for the CBI to look into as to what was it doing for 13 months. And when you get the FIR register, you transfer the investigating officer. Can we still, look at the fair investigation? My answer to this question would be no.
Okay.
We cannot look at the fair investigation. If it took 13 months to register an FIR, it may take 13 years to file the charge
Well,
sheet.
CBI tells us, Mr. Gaur,
money.
that the man who was in charge of that case has in fact now been shunted out because he went too slow allegedly on this. Of course, he went too slow because the PE was filed a year ago and the FIR was filed only now, and the CBI also suspects that this officer, CBI officer, was even leaking information about FIR and raids to people outside. So,
nothing happened at the SP level. I mean, I am well aware of the working of CBI.
I find it hard to believe that if KV Kamath and Sanjoy Chatterjee and even Sandeep Bakshi were going to be named in the FIR, that it was being done at SP level. I agree with you there, Mr. Gaur. You have raised some 2 important points. One of them is, what is the role of the RBI? And I'm going to take that back to Hemendra Hazari. Mr. Hazari, the RBI in the last 1 year has cried foul and complained about how they don't have enough control over the state banks, which is why they're not able to do anything to fix the problem there. This is a private bank, and more cases are now emerging out of about frauds and defaults where we could have had better systems in place in private banks. What about RBI's accountability?
That is the big question today, and how it is, ruling over private banks. You see, no government bank would have taken RBI to court, but Uday Kotak of Kotak Mahindra Bank is so brazen he can take them to court, and RBI till today has not penalized Kotak Mahindra Bank. And in this particular case of ICICI Bank, mind you, the whistleblower who had given that report had also sent it to the Reserve Bank of India, and he had sent it to numerous regulatory agencies, as well as, mind you, the business media. But nobody seemed to be concerned. It is only when it went on, went viral on social media that it started coming to the mainstream press. But this is what I say. Even in ILFS, you find that RBI somehow, put a Nelson's eye to what was going on there. So things which they get information, they don't seem to act, which is very shocking. And I believe that RBI is being quite partial when it comes to private sector banks. You see, look at here, the entire system failed. A whistleblower had got all the evidence. Nobody looked at it. Only when it becomes viral, then suddenly everyone starts poking their nose into it. Police get involved, RBI gets involved. And you've seen that, the CBI has taken them nearly a year to actually file an FIR. It shows you how politically powerful some of these CEOs of private sector banks are, and the kind of influence they are exerting not only on the regulatory agencies, but indeed of the government. The very fact that Mr. Jaitley can come out with a blog when he's serving as a senior minister to defend some of the people that CBI wants to investigate is a very dangerous precedent. It's actually so brazen, which is telling you, how close the private sector bankers are getting to the political establishment.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, do you want to say something to that? What kind of investigation can we expect out of CBI that is itself going through a credibility crisis when your own top minister has come out and slammed them for their action?
First of all, let me tell you, the first thing you told that the officer was transferred, because normally the officer who's filed the charge sheets, normally he is removed from the case because in order to maintain the neutrality of the case, so that other officers should follow up the case in the court in a very neutral manner.
They have simply filed the FIR right now.
No. In this charge sheet,
I wish the charge sheet had been filed, but they have only after a year of the PE being filed, only the FIR has been filed.
You are not updated, charge sheet have been filed.
No, Mr. Bhaskar Ghosh, you are horribly factually wrong. The FIR was filed on 23rd or 24th of January 2019, less than 10 days ago.
2019.
And the raids were conducted a day after that. So there is no charge sheet that has been filed in this case yet. Yes. Either which ways, the investigation has just begun. And what message is the government sending when Arun Jaitley is slamming the CBI for naming these people and filing this kind of an FIR, calling it adventurism, and Piyush Goyal, the current interim finance minister, is retweeting that?
No, Mr. Jaitley has told that when the FIR, this person have been named, now we should also... Can't hear.
We can hear you, Mr. Ghosh. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. So perhaps Mr. Jaitley has given his views. I am not commenting on this, but obviously what he told, the difference between the investigate, adventurism and professional investigation. So he is asking it is a professional investigation without getting biased about any persons. That's what he really meant through the blog. But what is my point, what is raised by my fellow panelists, that CBI has taken 13 months even to get the evidence, because normally in financial crimes to trail the money is very, very tough. You have seen the Axis cases also. But my point is that when the finance minister of this country himself is today facing the same charges, and it has been just replicated by Chanda Kocchar and another CEO of the private banks. So that is what I'm saying, and our finance minister is telling that, okay, fine, it has to be professionally investigated. In the past, the CBI has filed so many complaints about the bank.
I don't know where this word of caution was.
Convicted.
I don't know where this word of caution was, because the CBI filed its FIR 13 months after the PE was filed. This story has been out for almost 2.5 years now.
From PE to the FIR, you have to gather a lot of evidences.
Of course. So then I don't know why Arun Jaitley would call it adventurism. That's
From
the whole
PE to
point.
FIR, you have to gather
How
a lot
is
of
it adventurism? It's the slowest the CBI has ever moved. Look at the kind of speed they moved at and the other investigative agencies moved at when it came to the state banks, when it came to the public sector banks. That's exactly the point that Hemendra Azari was making about the differentiation and the differential treatment. So 2 points that have emerged that I wanted a response to. Mr. Jayan Gupta, this is concerning because the RBI must be held accountable. When the red flag was raised, when you were told about it, when there was an audit done and irregularities came to the fore, why no action was taken? Simply because it's ICICI Bank, or one of the biggest private sector banks and one of the biggest names in the banking industry, Chanda Kocchar?
See, there are a couple of points. The first, I would say that RBI argument that was made earlier that they do not have power against PSU banks, I never bought that argument. I do not buy that argument. RBI has absolute power to control both private and public sector bank. Why they have not been exercising their right, it is best answered by them. Second, lot of allegations have been, or rather a lot of questions have been raised on the investigative agency, on the political motive, and even on the right of the individuals to file a case. I would say if we start questioning every organization, then probably we are going towards a situation where every system will crumble, but situation is not that bad. The second question that came, that Kotak Bank has filed a case against RBI and RBI has not still penalized Kotak Bank. See, we are living in a country where everybody has a right. So if Kotak is aggrieved, they can always file a case, and it is not that RBI should retaliate and penalize Kotak. The matter is sub judice, so it is to be decided by the Honorable High Court. So let us not. Now coming back to all these things, I would say that once again the question comes, is the individual important or is the system important? And somehow or other we always mix the two. Sometimes the individual becomes important, sometimes the issue becomes important, sometimes the institution becomes important. It depends upon what is the flavor of the season. So till few months back, Chanda Kocchar, the individual, the high-fired CEO of bank, was very important. So everybody was dancing at her tune. Somehow or other, 9 months later or 8 months later, the season changed and the Chanda Kocchar is the only villain. I would not say the Chanda Kocchar is the only villain. I will reiterate that those who gave clean chit to Chanda Kocchar, if Chanda Kocchar is at all guilty, those who gave clean chit to Chanda Kocchar is also equally guilty, maybe in various degree. And ultimately again I would say that as far as the Justice Shri Krishna report and whatever is the status today, let us limit that this is only a finding on the procedural aspect. No one has till date examined the criminal aspect.
Yes.
Because Justice Shri Krishna was an individual, although retired justice, but he was not having a court of inquiry.
Right.
He could not have summoned any other witness, or he could not have summoned bank account, all other things. So he has not gone into the criminality aspect. It is only the procedural aspect which has been examined.
So again, it comes down to the point that what is the RBI doing about it? Are we being told that there were more than a dozen meetings that were held, credit committee meetings, where people sat and discussed whether or not they should give loan to this company, which ran into thousands of crores, and then they decided that they should give this loan to the company, and that the loan went bad, and nobody wants to be held accountable, nobody wants any accountability. Criminal prosecution, finally CBI is moving on it, but what about accountability within the banking sector? And if it was just one case, it would have been different, but the fact of the matter is that the rot is so deep right now within the banking sector. Take a look at this data. Fraudsters have looted 41,000 crore rupees from the banking system just in the year of 2017-2018. Granted, of course, one of those was the PNB Nirav Modi scam, which was a huge chunk by itself. The year before that also saw 23,000 crore, almost 24,000 crore worth of fraud. Thousands of crores of money is being taken away, looted from our banks. And nobody wants to bring in a permanent, deeper change in the system. When it was the public sector banks, the RBI started crying foul, saying, oh, we don't have enough powers, how are we going to fix it? Now that it's private sector banks, we are being told, well, we did an internal probe, we found that one person was guilty, we've removed her after much outcry, and the CBI will look into it. The CBI is taking its own sweet time. What is the accountability of the Reserve Bank of India now in this case? If they were indeed warned about it and red flags were raised in 2016, then how did Chanda Kocchar continue at the helm of ICICI Bank for over a year or two after that? If in today's era, after thousands of crores of fraud has come to light, we are not going to hold those who are in charge, those who are at the helm responsible, then how will we ever weed out this rot within the system? Sending one bank manager and one deputy director behind bars or booking them is not going to do the job. It clearly shows that checks and balances within our banking system are failing again and again. Will the government and Reserve Bank take note? Is the big question. Thank you to all our panelists for joining us on this debate.